See, we're 29 days into a government shutdown that shows no signs of ending. And if nothing changes, 42 million Americans could lose food assistance, sparking a nationwide crisis. But here's the thing. It's not just the government shutting down. It's the entire U.S. economy is quietly grinding to a halt, and hardly anyone's talking about it. So let's connect the dots here. Because if you're feeling like something's off, you're not crazy, you're just actually paying attention. And that, my friends, is something worth talking about. Okay, so I want to take a minute, share some thoughts in reference to just the overall conditions of this country as well as the world for the most part. But we're here within the United States of America because of this government shutdown and a variety of other factors. We're literally witnessing the grinding to a halt of our economy. And as a result of that, the financial conditions that will ensue will be something that we've never really experienced, in, at least not in my lifetime that I can recall. But once again, here I want to connect the dots and share with you a couple things worth paying attention to that the mainstream media is completely dismissing because of all the other distractions they love to throw our way. So as always, if you guys want to hear more of these little quick takes, definitely hit that thumbs up button to show your support for the channel as well as your appreciation for this type of content. And then also, if you got thoughts, ideas, suggestions, anything that comes to mind in reference to these subject matters or anything worth bringing to the community in general, drop a comment down below so more people can stay plugged in. And if all this is new to you, then I encourage you to subscribe to stay plugged in so you can get an alternative perspective as to what's really going on here. But in this video here, I want to talk about 9 high impact signals that the economy is buckling beneath the surface, signals that most people might miss until it's too late. And so these are some big names, some big numbers, as well as big implications. And it's all starting with the delivery giants that are collapsing at full speed. So in this video here, I'm going to talk about basically 3 things. The real reason why companies like UPS, Amazon, and Nestle are slashing tens of thousands of jobs in real time all at once. And then why this government shutdown isn't just about a political theater, it's economic kindling, in my personal opinion. And then last, how rising consumer burnout is silently collapsing America's malls, candy stores, baby clothing chains, you name it. Because once again, it won't be packaged together in a form and fashion that the mainstream media would feel comfortable giving to you. But then again, on this channel here, I give it to you straight. But first, the delivery collapse that nobody expected. So when the economy is strong, delivery companies are booming, of course. And that's why UPS is cutting 48,000 jobs. Okay, so you got 14,000 of them are management, which isn't just a belt tightening for the most part. It's a smoking alarm, in my opinion. So these aren't warehouse workers. This is middle management, operations, decision makers, key people in suits at the top of the building, not in the bottom working. See, people that are invested heavily in their long-term career. The people that paid attention in school, sat at the front of the classroom, fought for valedictorian to try to climb that corporate ladder. These are the individuals that are being impacted the most. So ultimately what that says is that UPS isn't planning for a slowdown, it's bracing for a complete collapse itself. This will probably rewrite the whole model of the logistic framework that was booming during the earlier years when the US was based upon easy credit that allowed us to export counterfeit currency around the world in exchange for real goods coming into this country that all say made in China. But then again, that's just half the story. Because the second thing we're paying attention to is the fact that Amazon, because their layoffs are just beginning. And so Amazon just kicked off its first waves of mass layoff with 14,000 corporate jobs gone. But the internal reports say that it's 30,000 will be cut when it's all said and done. So you got Amazon's HR lead, which said it plainly, quote, "We're reducing roles even while the company is performing well." So you gotta ask yourself a question. Why would you actually cut jobs if you're doing well, unless it was a part of a much bigger plan all along? And it might have something to do with the fact that they're trying to replace human labor for cheaper, easier to use software merged with robotics at the end of the day. But then again, that's only half the story, I'm sure. And so basically to translate all that, AI and automation are being ramped up. Human workers are being ramped down. And the good numbers they're referring to are masking a coming purge. And then, of course, the third part that I want to touch on is Target's quiet corporate purge. You see, Target isn't laying off frontline workers. They're cutting 1,000 highly educated corporate roles and eliminating 800 open positions. And so not only are they cleaning the house from up top, but they're also cutting down on the potential hires that they would like us to believe that they were going to fill in the first place. And so the question is why? Because they're trying to move even faster. So if you read between the lines, when legacy brands ditch high-cost thinkers for lean, reactive teams, it's usually not innovation, it's survival mode. And a lot of what Target is trying to do is basically compete with the online platforms such as Amazon, because as of now, everybody and their mother usually have a boatload of Amazon packages coming to the front door. And so that means less foot traffic inside of the Target stores in general. So your general brick and mortar stores no longer really serve a purpose. And so that's even more of a reason why they need to trim a lot of fat. And then the fourth thing thing is the fact that AI is devouring education companies in a very sneaky way. You see, online education giant Chegg is cutting 40% of its entire workforce. And then you might be wondering why. Well, AI has replaced a huge chunk of their value, and Google search patterns have shifted forever. So this isn't a tech blip, it's a fundamental reshuffling of the job market in general, because you have to ask yourself a question. If majority of people in school are already using these AI algorithm models, all the information that they're regurgitating back to professors as well as those within the educational realm is AI generated information in the first place. So you gotta ask yourself a question. Is the concept of education itself changing? Because majority of people no longer really take the time to actually open a book to read. They simply just ask a question on their phone or at their computer. And so literally the education thought process is gone altogether. And not only will they have consequences for today in reference to employment, but also for the future generation of kids that won't know how to actually learn properly when it comes time to using critical thinking as well as being able to access creativity, nevertheless thinking outside the box. And so not only has AI been just very disruptive in the education space, but also how people think in general. And then the fifth part worth bringing to your attention is the fact that Paramount is cutting 1,000 jobs post-merger. And so mergers usually promise growth. When companies come together, they decide to merge everything they have together to be stronger and to offer more value to the public. But at Paramount, it means 1,000 jobs they cut overnight. And so entertainment, once considered recession-proof, is now cannibalizing itself to please investors. And once the streaming bubble finally pops, expect even worse. Because now you got these large language models that do text to video, you have to ask yourself a question. Is there really a need for actors, actual physical people to go to buildings and to actually create budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars for a 7-8 month shoot when you can actually enter some prompts and either create actors that might have better acting skills than real people? These are things that people really have to consider moving forward. And then the sixth thing worth mentioning is the fact that Nestle, yes, Nestle's brutal 16,000 person layoff. And so literally Nestle just announced that it's cutting 16,000 jobs to regain investor confidence. So this isn't a startup. It's the largest packaged food company in the world. And if they're panicking, what does that say about the demand in general? And then of course we got Halloween coming up, and you got candy warehouse bankruptcies before Halloween. And so yes, a major candy distributor just filed for bankruptcy the week of Halloween. So that's like Santa quitting in mid-December. You can imagine how devastating that would be for a lot of kids that actually believe in Santa. And so it's a red flag that seasonal revenue lifelines are starting to break down. And we're not even done with 2025 yet. So imagine in the next couple of weeks, if this government shutdown remains, if economic conditions continue to get worse, and if this AI bubble doesn't continue to inflate, we're in for a world of trouble. And then the eighth thing worth bringing to your attention is the fact that Carter's is closing 150 baby stores. And so Carter's has increased its plan to ramp up its store closings from 100 to 150. So that's not just a retail contraction, it's a demographic signal. See, people are having fewer kids or they can't afford to shop for them anymore. Either way, it's a worrying trend that has ripple effects. And then last and most importantly, everybody that I know no longer goes to a mall. So literally it's the death of the mall structure in general. So something that was created over 40 years ago has finally come to an end, as every mall in your area, I'm sure, is already closed or get very little foot traffic. And so Westminster Mall was once America's second highest grossing retail site. As of today, it's shutting down forever, replaced by housing. And so as the malls close, they're using all that space to create additional housing, more unlikely for senior citizens, as we're witnessing a demographic shift of a lot of the baby boomers that helped expand during the industrial age now starting to retire. And so there's going to be a greater need for housing. And what better place to park housing other than empty parking lots where malls used to be located at? And so America's malls are past the point of dying. You got retails being gutted, and the communities built around them are starting to fall apart. And so what's causing all this? It's not just inflation, it's not interest rates, it's not just the shutdown of the government, it's consumer exhaustion. See, nearly half of the average paycheck in the US is spent within 48 hours. So you got millennials burn through 40% of their income within 12 hours. You got Gen Z is buried in overdraft fees, and most workers say daily pay is the only thing that will reduce their stress. So when people live check to check, even a small disruption becomes a collapse. Now imagine what happens when 42 million people suddenly lose benefits in just a few days. So that's not a slowdown, that's actually a breaking point. And clearly the government is aware of that. And I wouldn't be surprised at this left-right paradigm narrative that they give us of the Democrats just holding up things because the Republicans won't give, for this all to be intentional, to get things rolling in reference to the distractions that they love to have, which allow governments to then implement new policies and new procedures to further take away our rights and our liberties. And so once again, this isn't fear-mongering, it's literally just pattern recognition. So if anybody's paying attention and you factor all these conditions into what's really going on here, you realize that this isn't doom and gloom, this is reality. But you got to ask yourself, why are they doing this right now? What's at stake, and what are they willing to not give up? And the answer is simple: control and power. control over the masses, and the power of everything being concentrated into the hands of our government, which is mankind's greatest problem. And so from layoffs to closures to government dysfunction, we're seeing a slow motion unraveling of the consumer economy, and most people don't even see it clearly until it's too late. But of course you do, because you're paying attention. And if you stuck around this far, then obviously you're more informed than the average person. And that's why this information I find to be so important, because the average person has no clue as to what's going on. So that's why I encourage you, if you haven't, take a minute, hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment down below, let me know what I might have forgotten to include in this message, and then take this and share it with at least one person in your family so they can get a broader viewpoint as to what's really going on. And of course, I won't tell you all this without actually providing some strategies and recommendations. So as always, take a minute, scroll beneath this video here, check out some of the links that I put out there of things that I actually do myself and things I would recommend for people to find out more information about. Even if you don't bother to participate, at least consider the options, because once again, you won't hear any of this information coming from the mainstream media. And that's why I do what I do. But anyway, just sharing my 2 cents. Curious to hear what you think. Drop a comment. Catch you later.